What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode here of the BlockHash podcast, your number one resource for all that is happening across the emerging tech space. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you listen to or watch the show. I'm joined today by Peter, CEO and founder of Ideal, an AI Web3 platform equipping entrepreneurs with the resources to transform any business idea into a reality. Let's dive into that more today. Peter, welcome to the show. Happy to have you here, man. How you doing?
Yeah, very good. Very good. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Likewise. To get things underway, I'm sure the best way to start would be tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm sure people would also be very curious to what your story's like and maybe what led you down the path of AI and Web3. And usually everyone has a pretty interesting story, given that these are two very brand new industries for the most part. But what's your background like?
Sure. So my name's Peter. I'm British. I'm based here in Dubai, and I've been living in Dubai for almost 12 years in total. Bizarrely, my background is in the fine art industry. So I kind of fell into fine art at 20 years old, and I've actually been in that industry for over 20 years now. But when I moved to Dubai, everything changed. I got heavily involved in marketing and brand due to the kind of roles that I was getting involved in. And I got pushed into technology. The tech end of marketing, or the MarTech side of things, was very interesting to me. I'd kind of pioneered tech in the art world as well, always trying to find the best systems to be used in what we were doing. And that naturally gravitated me into the AI space and the kind of confluence of AI and Web3, mainly the projects that I was working on. And I've done a lot of kind of government projects here. And as I think many people now know, the UAE likes to be at the forefront of kind of pioneering certain technologies. And if you're not doing that, you're kind of getting stuck behind. So I kind of got enveloped into those industries a few years ago now, maybe 6 years ago, and have been venturing into it, ever since.
That's awesome, man. And the UAE definitely seems like one of those growing hubs for AI as well. I think they have a couple different initiatives really pushing it there to draw in a lot of attention for different AI startups as well. So it's probably like a good environment to kind of be in.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think the actual makeup, the foundation of the country, with it being a relatively new country, and the vision of the leadership here has always been, it's kind of two-dimensional, right? They've always had a very forward-thinking mindset. They've always wanted to do things differently and quickly, and kind of progress and stand out in the region, in the Middle East, as being, forward thinking. But they've always been welcoming as well to outside talent. It creates this kind of interesting mix of the right kind of people that are here in this space, that want to do things differently, and then the government creating that environment to allow us to do that. And that's the interesting thing about what we're trying to do. I genuinely, there are other places in the world, but we feel like we're bang in the right place to be doing this, in terms of how we're being supported. So yeah.
And then what are you guys trying to do? What would you say is the core mission for Ideal, and what problem or problems are you guys generally trying to aim to solve for entrepreneurs and their ventures?
Yeah, so as you can imagine, I've got quite a lot to say in this space, but I think with your background as well, Brandon, you kind of understand the entrepreneurial journey, and the difficulties really. So for us, we're zeroing in on those difficulties, the difficulties of having an idea effectively, and then making that idea real, and making it happen. And so, our fundamental product is a co-founder in your pocket. And we're trying to build a platform that can serve anyone with any idea anywhere in the world. And it's obviously utilizing AI, without which we would struggle to achieve that aim. But it's really the confluence of AI and Web3 and the decentralization of funding, that's also a big part of this. So it's not perhaps just a co-founder, but it's also a VC in your pocket, as well. And kind of the problems. I mean, this is a kind of a personal thing, but a couple of years ago, I reached a bit of a tipping point in my own personal life. I actually worked out that I said I was in the art industry, but from that age, 20 years old, I worked for the owner, or founder. He was an entrepreneur in his own right. And I have worked either for owners or founders, or run my own businesses my whole life, my entire career. In fact, thinking back to the age of 16, I worked directly for the owner of the business, and he put me in charge of his restaurant at that age, which was kind of scary, but I learned a lot. So my entire journey has been on the edge of entrepreneurial invention, and seeing what these founders would be going through, the stress of the unknown, and being forced to generate revenue on a day-by-day basis and keep their business alive. And then diving in myself, I guess some 8-9 years ago, when I started my own first venture, and have done a few things since. And the pain is staggering. It's very, very mentally hard, and physically hard, right? Because you're up against it, and you're up against it every single day. So a couple of years ago, having done a number of my own things, and as I mentioned to you, it's really kind of branding, marketing, building ideas for other people, building brands for other people. That made me hit a point where I thought, well, do I want to keep kind of doing this at this scale with my agency, or do I want to do something different and do something much wider? And I actually looked at, as I do every year, and I'm sure you've got this list as well, a list of ideas you've written down.
Every day.
Every day, there we go. And they're like horses in a race, right? They're at varying points of just the idea. I bought the URL, I named it, I designed a logo, all these little stages you kind of go through, and then you drop because real life hits you, or you're doing something else. And so I had all these ideas, and I really was like, I had kind of 15 or 20, and I hadn't moved them forward, right? And if people ask me what on my kind of CV, what's at the top, it's getting things done, right? So I consider myself someone who gets things done. And I couldn't move these, and it was so frustrating. So I kind of decided, look, AI is getting to a pretty strong place now. There has to be a platform. There has to be something that helps me do all of these, and it's going to be all or nothing. I either launch these 15 businesses, or I put them in the bin and forget about them and just focus on the one or two. And I couldn't find the platform. And I found that pretty bizarre, a little frustrating, that I couldn't find some kind of agentic co-founder that would take the lift off me. And so after a load of research, I decided I'm going to build it myself. I'm going to find a way to go all out and, get out there and build a platform that anyone can use, and anyone, in our view, can be an entrepreneur and will be. So that's where we think the future is headed.
There you go. That's the idea of all ideas. You didn't have anything, and you went out and just built it yourself. That's definitely the entrepreneurial bug right there, and it really encapsulates Ideal, I think, because as someone that's an entrepreneur as well, you do have these running lists of ideas, whether it's on paper or in your minds and different things you want to do, but it's always really difficult to get those off the ground and figure out how to take a next step with it. I can map out an idea for a brand new coffee shop or a laundromat business, or a SaaS company, but like figuring out like how to take it to like the next level to get, the business open, to get your first customer, to expand it and scale it. Like there's so many things that go into it that make that idea hard to come to fruition on your own. And like you mentioned, not having some kind of platform there, or, support in some kind of aspect, is where, unfortunately, that graveyard of ideas comes in, where it goes to die. And if there was something out there like you guys have now with Ideal, I think we'd see a lot more. And I think we will now, a lot more of these ideas actually come to fruition. So I think I kind of see the vision there of where the inception of this kind of came from.
Yeah, and you then end up in a place where you have to break down the journey, right? So you have to start looking into, what does it take to be an entrepreneur? And I'm a big fan of psychology. So much of what we do is driven by the difficult to find at times motivation, right? So what's motivation, and what makes you go above and beyond what you might normally? And so we started looking at things like change matrices. What makes people change? What makes people do things? What's stopping people from doing things? And we came up with this thing called Prevent, right? So it's essentially a matrix of people's psychology, the kind of mental blocks, lack of resource, so people not having enough money, but also, as if you already have one business, you can lean on that to kind of resource your next business, use your accounting team or whatever, and not pay the costs. So a lack of resources is a problem, lack of expertise. You know this, right? How many hats do you have to wear? On a given day, 1 minute you're the accountant, the next minute you're in marketing, the next minute you're human resources, the next minute you're the sales guy trying to pitch your product. A lot of people who are highly specialized in one area are not specialized in the others, so they struggle on an expertise front. A lack of vision is the next thing for us. Saying I want to build an app doesn't work. It's one app in what area, what problem are you solving, how are you going to do it? How, specific direction and vision. Execution is everything. Is how fast can you do it and to what standard? Network, a lack of people around you, and then the final one is timing. You can actually have the first 6 and you can fall down on timing. Timing is absolutely critical, right? To hit the market, not too early, not too late. It's the whole Goldilocks theory, right? You want it just right. So how do we deal with all of this? And this prevent matrix is what we're basing Ideal on, is really the reasons why people stop being an entrepreneur. We're less kind of down the road of thinking entrepreneurs are born and they're a certain type. We do think that certain character traits do help with being an entrepreneur, but this kind of comes on my background of the art world, right? Because anyone can be an artist. Creativity is inherent. It's in everyone. Kids paint before they write, and artists in the real world are pretty brave because they've already had the creativity stamped out of them through education, and then they have to reawaken it in themselves. We think the same thing applies with entrepreneurs. Anyone can do it, but the prevent matrix prevents you. So for us, it's like, well, how do we get all this stuff out of the way?
Absolutely. I want to go under the hood with your guys' process a little bit more, maybe talk about some of the core pillars of Ideal. On your guys' website, it said that Ideal stood for Imagine, Design, Execute, Accelerate, and Live. Can you explain how this makes up kind of the backbone of Ideal in terms of the process and how this helps you guys take founders from 0 to 100 essentially?
Yeah, for sure. So for us, a system is key, right? So it's a case of understanding that, and Ideal was kind of born on the basis of taking an idea live. So the L is a big fat capital L because it's like that's your goal. Live is the thing, and that's the hardest thing, right? But it doesn't start or doesn't move anywhere without imagination. So you need to come up with something, and ideas come from all sorts of places. Coming up with a good one or validating a good one is always quite interesting. I tell this story to everybody. Any ideas I came up with when I was younger, my dad's an accountant. He's very black and white. If I come up with an idea, he'll give me all the reasons not to do it. He's very risk averse, and if the numbers don't add up. My mum's a teacher and she's very creative. If I give her an idea, she'll tell me anything's possible, and she'll be very positive about it. And I guess both of those things aren't entirely accurate because you need a balanced view. So your idea needs to be both creative, it needs to have the art of disruption and be different, but it also needs to be grounded in the real world and it needs to be validated. So for us, the imagine phase is not just about coming up with an idea, but it's also imagining a robust, good idea. So validating ideas in the imagine stage is critical. And I think there's a real kind of narrative out there now around testing ideas and speed at which you can test, fail early, right? An idea before you spend a load of money on it. So for us, the eye of imagine is about that. It's about coming up with an idea, but making it valid. And that's our first product is a validation, an AI-powered validation tool that gives you that confidence. And then it's design and execute, right? And so design first is about a plan, and it's about ensuring that you have a roadmap in front of you. And you'll know this. There are key things you can't avoid. Like you need to call it something. You need to be able to promote it. You need to be in a place where if it's a product, you've got to design and execute that product in some way, shape, or form. There's a whole bunch of things in the design process that need to be mapped, but then it's execute. So then it's like, what do I do and when do I do it? And this makes up the heart of what we're calling the IRP. So it's an idea realization platform. And this is the co-founder that kind of guides you. So when you wake up in the morning, you don't have to look at the 489 steps. You just look at the 3 you've got to do that day. And the platform takes care of the prioritization, what you need to do and when you need to do it. And the key for the design and execute stage is the adaptability. So on the platform, the AI will not just stick with the original design. If you do or don't do things, or it gets new information, as you always do, it will adapt in the execute phase. So it's this hyper-personalized approach to the AI through the execute that's really, really unique. It's going to be super proactive in getting you moved forward. The A of accelerate is a quite unique one as well. So this is a study that we looked into, and it felt to us it was like IDE is enough, right? So imagine design, execute, and then you're done, right? Then you're live. But that's not how it works, right? Most ventures actually end up failing in the final stages of launch. And that is when you run out of momentum, you kind of get around the corner and there's still a long way to go and you just didn't realize. So you thought your plan was going to be executed in 2 or 3 months and you're in month 4 or 5 and you're still not there. If you don't accelerate at the end of the race, you're not going to get across the finish line. So for us, it's critical that we have built in this accelerate process where we're trying to ensure entrepreneurs speed up to get to the finish line and kind of eliminate those mental blocks in the final stages. And then live. Live is the goalpost for us. That's where we want people to get to. But we want to equip people to go into the world informed. So live is are you fully ready? Is there more that you need to do? Are there I's to dot, T's to cross? And what world are you going into right now? Because 6 months ago, the world was different. Invariably, if you're building a tech product, the world changes every month, every week. So for us, it's about that final live stage, preparing people for kind of release into the real world with their business. So yeah.
You mentioned the idea realization platform. I know that also ties in with a couple other things like the idea funding platform, the decentralized venture capital funds. How do these kind of work in tandem with each other?
So they're kind of symbiotic. They do work together, but the audience for us is slightly different for each one. So the IRP in itself, when we say anyone with any idea anywhere in the world, we do mean that. And we kind of have this set audience of 9 different, kinds of people that would use an IRP. And that's from, somebody who's never done anything in their life in terms of being an entrepreneur and starting their own business, to a serial entrepreneur, somebody who has, I guess like myself, a multitude of ideas. And I don't want 15 teams. I just want, one platform and doing 15 ideas. And then you have people in a business who have to launch ideas within the business that they're in. So there's a whole bunch of different people who can use the IRP, and you can use it without being funded, right? If you're self-funding, or you just want to start a side hustle, you just want to launch an e-commerce business, you can use the IRP, right? And that is for anybody. The DVC and the IFP, the funding platform, work with the IRP in that they only fund the ideas from the IRP. So the deal flow comes from our idea realization platform, but not all ideas get funded. So it's going to be less than 1% of those ideas that are viable and valid for the funding side of things. But what we're trying to do is ensure that ideas that would not normally be considered by a VC are considered by the DVC, because it's more innovative in the way that it validates ideas. And we're using agentic scoring to make sure these ideas are independently scored. But we're also in a place where we can see work in progress. So people do not qualify for funding on the IRP unless they have ventured a certain amount down the path with their idea. So we can validate that there's proof of work effectively. There's also personality assessments and various other things that happen before people qualify. But the IFP in itself is an open door for people to fund, right? So I'm sure you're very familiar with the world of VC, right? Hard to get into, closed door. There's quite specific mentality in that space. And I myself sat here with my few $1,000s. I can't get it. I'm not going to be able to fund the next Uber, right? I'm unlikely to even hear of it until it's in certain stages. This platform is completely different. You can fund very early. You can join the fund with a very low ticket. For example, it's fully decentralized, so anyone with any money anywhere can put into this fund, and the fund is controlled by a DAO. So it's going to be in a place where people aren't just putting their money into a fund and fingers crossed it's going to be well managed and funds are going to be well deployed. the DAO is going to see the deal flow. The DAO is going to vote on the different categories and different areas that we're going to focus on geographically. So, the IRP is anyone, any idea, anywhere. IFP is anyone with any money, anywhere, or any funding to deploy into that. And the DVC is unique in that we're using Web3, right? So it's a fully crypto enabled fund, and the three work in tandem.
There are a lot of ideas out there. How do you guys go about, filtering those? Do you have a criteria that needs to be matched, or a certain set of milestones that have to be hit before you can apply your idea? What kind of gets you over the hurdle there?
Sure. So for us, we the kind of first product to market is something we're calling fast feasibility, and that is anything over 100 characters goes in there, and it will assess it for you, and it will give you a traffic light score. So kind of green, amber, red. Green means, look, on the face of it, this is good. We advise you to take it forward and consider it. Amber means needs refinement, which at that stage a lot of ideas land on amber if they're reasonable, but they normally need a lot more information. Red means this is a bit crazy, right? So we've been running tests, and some people talk about putting servers in space, for example, because hey, it's freezing cold up there, right? So it's a good place to stick all the servers, but then how are you going to get all the data down here and all the other questions that go with it? And in fact, it's just completely unfeasible, and that does score a red, even in the fast feasibility, that kind of idea. So you can test anything, but whether we think you should take it forward or not is subjective. And for us, it's like if you get the amber or the green, we push you to a more advanced feasibility called live feasibility. And that's a 20, 30 minute backwards and forwards with the AI asking you specific questions. Your experience, what do you know about your idea and the place that you're going with your idea, but also this personality assessment. Are you equipped? Are you the right kind of person to make this happen? And that changes your score dramatically. And you're then in a place that's pretty qualified as to whether your idea can move forward or not. Now, feasibility is one thing, so anybody can get feasibility, right? Using the IRP, we're going to have to build this over time. If you want to compete with SpaceX, how much can we help you? I don't know the answer. We have worked out that 60 to 70% of the lift is pretty much the same in any business. When you're trying to launch something, you are going to need branding, you are going to need marketing, you are going to need to engage people. Product development, though, is very different, right? So it depends on what it is you're trying to prototype or what it is you're trying to build. We would say that our first iteration of the IRP, we're pushing out before the end of the year, can probably help anybody in tech and doing kind of products in the tech space. E-commerce, pretty easy to manage. Things like F&B, cafes, what have you, are pretty straightforward to do. And a number of kind of fairly basic side hustles, including people wanting to freelance and doing what they're doing. But things that are highly technical, that have a scientific element to them, that require patents and a lot of exploration and iteration. It's not going to be that specialized at that stage. But Brandon, as you know, AI is moving so fast. It's going to be a matter of time before we add these agentic elements that are specific to those particular areas, genres, whatever you call them. And we also have a plan to build this agentic stuff out. So you're in a place where we're doing something that's more kind of multimodal than just using a single LLM or even a bunch of them together. We want to be in a place where it's a full support kind of setup. It's highly specialized depending on which areas you start to move down. And obviously, as we start getting more data internally on how we can support people and we start to see the journey, then our own proprietary AI setup is going to be learning the entrepreneurial process. And that is going to obviously make the product better and better over time. So the answer is yes, anyone can do it. But in the early stages, we're not going to be able to support the more technical stuff until a later stage, I don't think.
Okay. And then is there any caps on the amount of capital that could be sourced for an idea? Like some startups might need as little as 20,000 to really get off the ground. Some might need $500,000, maybe more. Is there kind of a maximum or a minimum there?
No, we don't think so. I think the fund itself at the very beginning is going to be kind of vectored towards specific areas that we think we can best support, that have the most kind of chances of success. We're in a place where we're not relying on the AI to deploy capital initially. This is something that we're going to have the kind of standard LP GP setup. So we're going to have somebody actually running the fund and deploying the capital at the beginning, but they're going to be directed by the DAO. And then over time, we're going to start building thresholds in as to how the deployment of capital can be agentically done in certain areas, direct to the different partners that we're working with that support entrepreneurs. So we're kind of de-risking it on that front. Putting large amounts of money into people's wallets, I don't think is going to happen from day one, because obviously we're kind of going to be careful to monitor that. But we do feel over time, as different countries and jurisdictions are, to some degree decentralizing and AI enabling the way they do things. So here in Dubai, you can do everything online. You can set up your business A to Z. You can set up bank accounts A to Z from your front room. You haven't got to meet anybody. Lots of other countries are going in that direction. We plan to build partnerships with those entities, and we'll be in a position where we can agentically pre-seed and seed probably up to fairly decent amounts of money at the very beginning as required. And then we can start looking at how that money is accessed and how we gate access to that money. So for us, it's not just the flexibility and decentralization of how we manage to operate, but it's also how we're using technology to gate access to funds and build trust over time. So I don't foresee limits as such. Certainly, if it's a space that requires investment, and for us, I think one of our rules is to try and delimit people. Overall, we don't want people to feel like there is a cap. But I would say that our investments will always be pretty early stage. So I wouldn't expect them to be, significant amounts of money as such.
Another thing I want to ask you about is the overall VC ecosystem, which is constantly evolving as well, but most people don't necessarily think about. But especially, being in the side of the Web3 AI type sphere, it's definitely slightly different. And I'm curious if you've noticed with VCs, if their preferences have changed over time. If you can shed some light on maybe their selectivity, their degree for favoritism, or getting in the door necessarily, that being a hard world to kind of break into. What is the VC world kind of like today versus where it was before a lot of Web3 and AI? Because I feel like that has had quite an influence on it.
I don't know where to start with this because it's a super interesting journey for us because, we've been raising, and off the back of that, you meet a lot of people in the industry, and we're pitching to people and talking to them. I would say people are kind of more risk averse. So I think that there's been a lot more awareness of kind of the failures. I mean, the failure rate in startups is some 90%, right? And gauging why that happens and how it happens is subjective. But I think that the VC industry is pretty mature now, and it's looking back on its kind of what it's done over time. And 90% failure is a pretty dramatic space. There's also more money, I think, than ever before, which means that there is more competition than ever before. So people are fighting to find that golden nugget, the thing that's going to be the next Uber or the next Airbnb. And I think as well that technology is starting to seriously disrupt that industry. So I know that my algorithms on LinkedIn and elsewhere are greatly warped by my research into this field, but I'm seeing a lot of people saying the same stuff. VCs are going to be disrupted by AI because AI is going to be better at assessing things than a human being is going to be. I think they're suffering from deal flow, Brandon. I really don't think that there's a huge amount coming through, and everyone's kind of fighting over the scraps. And I think that they're becoming more protective. I would argue that there's a kind of divergence of two different types of VC. There are the ones who are kind of trying to batten down the hatches and close things off and argue the case that they have the edge over technology and they have the experience and they can still source the best deals. They still deserve to take pretty big chunks out of a young entrepreneur at the early stages by giving them a bunch of cash. And then I think there are others who are saying the system is broken. We're seeing people in the industry saying this can't survive much longer in this space. There's a lack of accountability. There's too much bias towards certain geographies. There are major liquidity challenges in terms of people actually getting their money out once they've made an investment. So we think, honestly, and one of my co-partners or co-founders, Daniel, who's very much in this space and has been for a long time, his view is that this system is going to have a big shakeup, and Web3 wasn't the thing to do it, but AI definitely is, and the confluence of both is a nightmare for VCs. So, I think your background's, pretty closely aligned to the world of finance, Brenda, as well, right? So you you might kind of see what I'm saying. But yeah, I think that's my view.
Yeah, it's very interesting and somewhat nuanced, and because I think it's changed a lot as well over time. And Web3 is a very young industry. AI, if we look at like the LLM side and boom of this space, is also very young, and it's exciting yet highly risky because of how new it is and how much it can change so quickly. And there's a decent chunk of the audience here that actually are VCs and angels and private offices as well, because I interview a lot of ideas. I interview a lot of founders in startups, so it's a good place for them to come and learn and get more alpha as they're looking for things. I'm privileged to have some conversations with them at times, and they tell me a lot about what they look at and in particular for them, and they're always looking for what's new and what's hot. And obviously they have generally investors as well underneath them that they're trying to um, you know give the best interest to and to pay attention to as well, because they're managing their capital and whatnot. But there's this like this hunger and desire for new things right now, and I've almost seen them like throw money at things that I wouldn't even imagine them throw money at. And I think they're just trying to get ahead of a lot of the innovation right now, because we're kind of living in this, I feel like, golden age where you have the internet and social media and marketing is at an all-time high in terms of what you can do. And it makes everything like super high octane, if that makes sense. So it's like something could explode the next day if it just has the right amount of leadership, the right structure, the right timing, the right capital. It's a hyperactive space. So there's a lot of VC activity involvement, I think more so than ever before, especially within Web3 and AI and cloud-based, SaaS-based businesses. But it's interesting to kind of watch and evolve, and once in a while pick their mind and see like what are they prioritizing.
And I'm sure it's extremely challenging. It's one of those things where there is kind of a lot to look at, a lot to consider, and I guess the pressure is there as well. So it's going to be interesting to see where it ends up, on the industry level, and what being a VC means in a few years' time compared to what it used to, for sure. So yeah, we're obviously closely aligned with it, so we'll see.
100%. So what's next for Ideal? Are you guys going to any events or conferences, speaking engagements? Are you guys making any new additions to Ideal or announcements? What's kind of the next step?
Sure. So for us, our roadmap's pretty clear for this year. We're launching our Gov token right now. So we're kind of building out support, kind of community support for this token. This is going to basically run the DAO that will manage the fund. So our first raise is to kind of build this out, and that's going to go live late June. So we're just a few weeks away from that at the moment. And for us, it's about how we're kind of positioning and promoting ourselves as this kind of confluence of AI and Web3. So we're kind of on a mission to get that token launched. The fast feasibility product is going to go live in a few weeks' time. So that's something people can use, and it's completely free. It doesn't cost you anything to test your ideas on that platform. So that's kind of part of the roadmap. And then the live feasibility I talked about is going to follow probably about a month after that, month and a half. So we've got a kind of double layered feasibility product in the marketplace in the next few months. And then off the back of the Gov token raise, we're going to be launching the IRP before the end of the year. So that co-founder in your pocket, we've already started some development work on that. And it's going to kind of ride off where AI is in a few weeks' time, say 8 to 12 weeks, as to who we're kind of using and positioning ourselves with. But that's going to be a build out from a team based here in Dubai. And we're also working, kind of in Asia as well. So we have teams there. And the IFP itself is going to be reliant on this security token raise that we're doing towards the end of the year in Q4. So that's going to be the fund. So the ideas that start to come through the feasibility products and then into the co-founder product will immediately have a funding option. by the end of the year, and people can access it through the IFP. Events, I mean, I'm all about marketing and promo. So for us, it's, depending on where we are on our roadmap as to what we're going to do, on an events space. Here in the UAE and the wider Middle East, things go pretty quiet through the summer, but we'll be kind of pushing out towards the end of the year for sure. Anything that's kind of picking up. And for us, it's this, we kind of have three areas, right? So we're in the entrepreneurial space, so anything that's in that domain. Anything in the kind of AI space, and obviously the Web3 space for us as well. So any event that's the confluence of those three things is for us, and we'll be there.
If someone has a good idea today, is there a place where they can go apply or join a wait list, or is it a bit too early still?
Yeah, it's a little early, but for sure, if you kind of jump on any of our platforms, so if you go to idea-l.com, then we've got kind of all of our links to our Discord and Telegram communities. We're kind of engaging them at the moment. There is going to be something we promote for idea submission in the next few weeks that's linked to the token. So if you have good ideas, there's definitely a way to engage us through that. And we would be taking ideas from that, if there's some good ones there, and helping those people to make them real and make them live. So yeah, just keeping an eye on us and what we're doing would be the first step. But there will be a product out there very soon, a few weeks' time.
Excellent. And then if anyone wants to get in contact with you, are you available on LinkedIn, or is there another resource people could reach out and maybe send you an email or get in contact?
Yeah, for sure. So LinkedIn, I'm there. I'm very active on LinkedIn, and then just Peter at idea-l.com anytime. I'm very open. Like it's kind of funny, that all the VCs out there and the angel investors that I've been writing to that don't respond, they just fire me up to. I will respond to everybody that writes to me. So, and I do have this strong belief, Brandon, in that kind of anyone can do these things, and we really are building this on a level to help as much as we can. So yeah, that's a serious statement on my part.
Yeah, I love what you're doing with Ideal. I think this is something that can be really beneficial for a lot of entrepreneurs out there. It is tough. It's not just tough because there's not enough ideas. It's the other way around. There's so much oversaturation these days. It's how are you going to stand out? How are you going to niche down and then scale from there? How do you acquire capital? How do you learn all these other skills? And most entrepreneurs are wearing multiple hats these days, and hopefully agentic AI will make that a little bit easier, but it's difficult. And so I think something like Ideal is definitely going to make it a lot more easier, and I think help glue together a lot of these different things to make more ideas more successful. So I do appreciate the time taken today and explaining this in more detail and where you guys aim to take it. I think it'll be awesome. If you're in the US at any point in time, or you're in Vegas, I'm in Colombia right now, but I'll be moving back to Vegas full time in September, working towards opening at a physical studio location. So if you're in Vegas, if you're in the US, let's definitely link up at some point. Would be fun to do maybe a part 2 in person, or I can come out to Dubai at some point, and we can dive further into it as more comes out.
Yeah, I'd love to do that, and you'd be very welcome out here for sure. So yeah, anytime you're coming this direction, let me know.
Awesome. Well, sounds good, man. Take care, and do keep me up to date on everything, and we'll do some more stuff in the near future for sure.
Sounds amazing. Have a good day ahead. Take care.